So far this year, we have looked at the current top games of 2024. We have also looked at the potential top publisher of 2024, Kagra Games. But what about the rest of the adult game space? We are almost halfway through 2024 and we have already seen almost 800 new releases on Steam. We are also on pace to pass the almost 1,700 new releases that came out in 2023 on Steam. Now, there is no way that I can cover every game that comes out, but I am going to talk about some of the trends that I have seen so far in 2024. Using a list of 41 games that have come out in the last 3 months, we are going to look at what has come to Steam from Patreon, look at 4 publishers, other than Kagra, look at some decent games that may have released into early access a little too early, and unfortunately look at some games that probably shouldn't have been released at all. Sometimes I get questions about why so many of my videos focus on Steam. Now, I will be talking about the new games on Patreon that have yet to make it on Steam, as well as what the most popular games of 2024 are so far in Japan in later videos over the next month. But the reality is that Steam is where most people play their games, adult or otherwise. I will continue to cover other platforms, but Steam is where most people play these games, and where most developers make their money. Well, except for Summertime Saga and Wildlife, but there are always exceptions.
So do you want to get started with the new Patreon games? How do you have that broken down? Because I know a lot of games come from Patreon to Steam.
Yeah, I have a lot for Patreon, but I think I'm going to go into like the games that are doing well so far, games that would have done better a few years ago, like if they released a few years ago, and then maybe games that have a good chance of doing well when they release.
Okay.
So they'll release later this month.
Okay. So what do you got first?
So what I got first is Nightly Passions.
Oh, you did a review on that one a long time ago.
Yeah, I did. I was really, really excited about it. I covered it back in, I think, 2022, and I was waiting for the Steam release that was scheduled for 2022. So I was waiting for it, and then it never came.
Waiting.
But now it's here, and it's doing very well so far.
It's good.
Yeah.
I know there's I know you talked to the developer, and I guess there's some DLC scheduled.
Yeah, because there are DLCs on their itch, on their Patreon, that they have been working on for years now, and so they will probably come out on Steam at some point. But yeah, Nightly Passions, it's this visual novel medieval game where you are...
it seemed like a classic anti-hero.
Yeah, you're just this guy who is trying to save their sister, and you're going on this like kind of grand quest on to do that. It's a sandbox with a ton of mini games. Like there's a mini game where you're like fighting this old man in like an arm wrestle. That one's pretty fun. And it's also a card battler, which I have a
missing those. Yeah,
I have a love-hate relationship with card battlers, but I think it does it well.
And so I mean, I have seen it. It's doing okay. I mean, it's not doing as well as what you had on your top games, but we're not going to talk about those games.
No.
Your 41 games are the 41 games other than what you talked about on the Kagra list, other than what you talked about.
Yeah, these are entirely new games. I'm going to try not to reinstate any of the games that I've talked about so far.
It will be interesting to see how many people are like, well, why can't you just review 800 games, Annie?
Because that's a lot of work. Like, 41 games took me a while.
What other games do you think are doing well?
Yeah. I think Love Sucks Night 2 is also doing well. I think it's also doing better than Night 1, which is really surprising because sequels don't really do well. It depends.
So if you do a DLC, you can... Unless you create something like a battle chest, all combined version, and start selling that, you're never going to sell more copies of a DLC than you do the original game.
Yeah.
Now, if you make a game a sequel, you have the ability to, so for example, Witcher 2 sold way more games than Witcher 1. Witcher 3, it's not even close how many more games Witcher 3 sold. But if you look at the DLC on Witcher 3, of course... the DLC on Witcher 3 did not sell as many copies as copies of Witcher 3 were sold.
Yeah, yeah.
So there's an advantage with DLC in that you have an established group who are likely to buy it, but except in extreme cases like the original StarCraft. The original StarCraft, combined with Brood War, sold in a battle chest, sold way more copies than the original StarCraft by itself. But that is, like you said, that's the exception, not the norm.
Yeah, it really just depends.
So when these developers are putting DLC in, they could be hampering themselves. Whereas if they had, part 2 or another name, being a dick, this time it's personal, or whatever you want to name the thing, that tends to sell better if it's a known brand. If it's not a known brand, okay, well, then you're going to have different problems. So
yeah. But yeah, so night 2 kind of carries off of the first game where you're just this guy who's lusted after by these 2 monster girls, a vampire and a succubus, and they just want to get you laid and then want to kill you. So, I feel like that's pretty fair for a succubus. I don't know about a vampire, but
the vampire, they're both preying on your vital essence.
Yeah,
one is,
yeah.
This amorphous sexual energy thing, and the other is your blood. So.
Oh yeah. But I think it has, great visuals. It's hand-drawn art, and
you're always a sucker for
I'm
those.
always a sucker for hand-drawn art. But I really like the hand-drawn art in this.
Okay. Now, I have noticed that the 2 games you've picked now are both hand-drawn art games. So, is it that we're seeing, a trend moving where once again the hand-drawn art games are...
I guess we could. Yeah, because the next game is actually hand-drawn art as well. I actually wasn't realizing that until you said that. But yeah, the next game is called Realms of Bondage, and that's also a hand-drawn art thing. This one's actually a pretty old one. Like, it's like the Patreon of this game was made back in 2016, and it's a known developer for the themes of bondage and BDSM, Realms of Bondage. But most of their games from this developer deal with that flavor profile. It started as an early access game in 2023, and now it's fully released. It released in April. And, it goes along with their other games relating to slaves and the BDSM.
So it's just kind of an exploration of the different parts of the BDSM.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I think it's good for people who like that flavor. Okay. I think it explores it well.
So do you have a non-hand-drawn game that is doing well, or is it all hand-drawn?
Well, there is Sunbreed, which is with DAS models.
Okay.
But yeah, this is actually by the developer from Picture Perfect and Secret Summer, which was actually on my silver tier for top Steam games of 2022 list.
Okay, so a known developer.
Yeah, another known
had
developer.
Some success. Okay.
Yeah, so Sunbreed is it's a vampire one. But
Monsters are so hot right now.
I know. But it's this murder mystery kind of visual novel where you are a half vampire and you have to find out who killed your parents. And so you work with the police and all that. But I think it's going to do well. The renders are okay. And I don't think it's going to do well as his previous games like Secret Summer and Picture Perfect. I think it just depends.
There's time, though.
Yeah, of course, there is time.
I know you were talking to me about Personal Study.
Yeah, that one actually is really interesting to me because it's this 3D environment, kind of it reminds me of Arakan, which is a Patreon game that I reviewed last year.
Yeah, what was that, one of your top new Patreons or something?
Yeah. But yeah, it reminds me of that. It's a female protagonist, third-person game where you have to solve puzzles in this magical university. There is a story, but it is early access, so it's not fleshed out yet. But there's more focus on the puzzles right now and the sexual animations.
Now, I know you were talking about games that have come out that probably should have come out
a few years ago. Yeah, because Steam is just different now, same as Patreon.
The expectations from the consumers are higher.
Yeah, the expectations are higher especially from like an early access standpoint. Yeah. But we'll talk about that
in a little bit.
Yeah, with later games.
Yeah, looking forward to that.
I know.
So sad.
It really is.
So I know Lucky Mark came out.
Yeah. That's like a sandbox game where you live with your boss, who's as a programmer. She's just like, oh yeah, you can just live at my house.
Was this a Russian game?
Was this a Russian game?
It felt like a Russian game.
I mean, probably.
But I don't know. Before all the Russian games got like banned from Patreon.
Oh yeah, there were so many.
And they had to go to Boosty.
Yeah. Oh well, that's what happened with Personal Study.
Oh really? Okay,
yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
But it finished a while ago, didn't it?
Yeah, it did. It's been, they've been working on it since 2017, so it is an older game, and you can tell
but they're working on Amnesia now, right?
Yeah, they are working on Amnesia.
So,
they've been working on that since like 2020. Yeah.
So yeah, I remember this game finishing like years ago, and it's just now coming on Steam.
Well, yeah.
And it's not a remaster. It's not like an upgrade. Like what was the mind control one? Sins of Desire. What was that one called?
Oh, the definitive one?
Yeah, the definitive edition.
Yeah. I don't remember it. It's Dreams of Desire.
Dreams of Desire.
Yeah, that one. Definitive edition. Yeah, that's what it's called.
Edition. some Mad Libs game.
Yeah, I know.
But I remember that one at least had like upscale graphics for the Steam release.
Yeah, there is a game that I'm going to talk about that has like upscaled their graphics, and it was like an older game, but now it looks like it could, become something more.
But Lucky Mark just seems like a game that if it come out like 3 years ago or even 2 years ago.
Yeah, because it has like that Man of the House kind of vibes, and that's all I'm thinking about when I see it. And so,
like,
and Man of the House, and Man of the House it looks dated, but it did well, back then. I think it was like 2019.
All right, so what next on the maybe should have come out a little while ago?
So I do want to talk about Last Hope.
You've talked about this one before.
I have, but I guess want to talk about it again.
You're like, I really want to talk about this some more.
Well, because, I reviewed it, I first played it in 2021, and it looked rough. I'm going to be honest. It looked really rough. Like, it was really bright, and there wasn't much to the story. The models looked bad, to be honest.
But it's one of those, three open kind of world 3D things, and that's hard to do.
And especially if you think of, like, what they looked like back in 2021, most of them didn't look good. And I think now we're starting to see a push towards more of like that 3D environment scene, like with Personal Study and Araken. They both look amazing.
And you were telling me that this game does look better, and it's got some AI art as well.
Well, so they have AI art for the what is it called? The menu, and that's about it.
Okay.
There's not that much.
Okay.
To be honest, I think it's just like the menu
part.
But
the 3D models are better?
The 3D models are better. I think actually the whole 3D environment is better. Like there's more polish to it. So I still think it's a pretty fun game, even though, it feels kind of like a dated game. Okay. So
if you really like science fiction, maybe?
Yeah. And I mean, it's not doing badly on Steam, which I was worried about.
All right. So I'm sure you've got a college game for me.
I do.
Because you've talked about how college games seem to be on the decline, so it would make sense you saying, hey...
Yeah, so I have College Kings 2, episodes 4 and 5, moving out.
Well, at least there's a title by the episode 4 and 5, so... Because I hate those, episode 2, 4, 5, I hate that, so that's good.
Yeah, at least you know what's going to happen, so I guess he's moving out now.
Now, College Kings was one of these interesting things, because that was kind of like the explosion of the college games. You had College Kings, you had... What was the other one, the Russian one?
College Bound?
College Bound.
Yeah.
And then, of course, Being the Dick came out.
Being the Dick
came out the year before.
Yes. Being a dick.
To be fair, given the choices you make in that game, I stand by that title.
Yeah, I could never be a dick.
And it's me saying it, so you don't have to unfollow her on Twitter again or whatever happened last time. So.
Yeah, that was whatever. But yeah, it exploded in that, college era, like 2020,
and
that kind of stuff.
College Kings 2, when it came out, it just kind of stepped on a rake or something. I don't know what happened with that.
It was really bad. It was especially the episode 2, the pool party one, that came out in November of 2022. And I don't think I actually covered it because...
You just stopped covering?
Well, because it tanked, and I felt bad, but...
Well, I know you don't like to give bad reviews.
I really don't.
You would rather not talk about a game than speak ill. Unless it was that pirate game, because you were really...
We'll get to that, actually, because I was gonna bring that up.
It crawls out of the grave.
It does, because I thought they were gonna have a, like one of those redemption arcs.
Okay, all right.
I believed in it. Okay, so I wanted to give
where are we with College Kings? Is there any silver lining here, or are we just still kind of mired in...
I don't know. So these episodes are about, the main male character moving out finally of the college, from the college.
Graduating?
Yeah, probably. And they're doing this, double episode where they're combining episodes 4 and 5. And
hasn't it been over a year?
Yeah, it's been over a year. And so it's been a while. So that's probably why they combined both of these episodes, so it had more content.
Do you think they're just trying to finish everything up and move to the next game?
I have that feeling. I know they probably were like, oh, here's more content. But once you kind of say, oh, this is episodes 4 and 5, it kind of felt like they're rushing.
Are these still all DLCs too?
Yeah.
That makes it tough, because then things start getting... Now, if they do finish, and if it's packaged together in one kind of
they could do that,
and as long as the reviews aren't too bad, I think there's people like a complete story, people like a finished arc, people really enjoy that, and we're willing to enjoy that and then see a sequel. But we like to have a beginning, a middle, and an end. Clearly, not just and lame all like cliffhangers
and all just in one because that's what they did with College Kings 1. They had all those acts that
and
were
then they
separate.
Repackaged it,
and they repackaged it into one single game. So hopefully, I'm thinking that's what they're going to do.
So you're saying there's hope?
There's hope.
All right.
There's hope. But, I mean, if you like the college flavor, then you probably know of this game. If not, you should probably check it out.
I knew you were talking to me about another, it seemed like a college game. MILF's Plaza, is that a college game too, or is it just kind of a young person living in the city game?
Yeah, it's more like that. But yeah, MILF's Plaza. That was actually on my Steam Next Fest video in February.
Are you going to do another Next Fest for the June Next Fest?
Oh yeah, definitely. Okay, right. Yeah. But yeah, MILF's Plaza, I honestly thought it was going to do better because it had this like wish list campaign that had over 50K wish lists.
Shut up, that's a lot.
It is a lot, but then I went into like the database and I was like, oh,
it did not sell.
It didn't sell well.
You don't get a 1-to-1 with wish lists.
No.
And sometimes you'll have a game explode and exceed its wish list.
Yeah.
But the more wish listing you have, and I would be interested to see when they started the wish list, because there seems to be like an optimal range for a wish list where you want to be like 6 months out to 3 months out, and the longer your wish list process is, people just lose interest. So I think
actually it was relatively close.
Then how the hell did they have not a better conversion rate?
I don't know.
That is unfortunate.
I know.
Oh, well.
Yeah, it didn't do that well. People ran into a lot of bugs. There were language issues.
Okay, all right, okay.
Yeah,
so it was just
missing content.
It was a bad launch.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was essentially a bad launch.
Okay.
And the devs are currently working on this, and they've been
it's so hard to recover from that.
It really is, but they have been responding in a very timely manner.
Why isn't this on your list of games that came out too early?
Well, okay, so I was going to put that on there, but it is classified as a completed
That's a
game.
completed game. Okay.
It didn't come out as early access, and I think that's why it was.
But aren't you the one making these lists? You can categorize them however you want.
Yes.
It is so funny watching you like, oh, I'm going to make this rule and I'm going to make this list. And you put them all together and you're really meticulous and counting grains of sand.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you're the one making all of this up, okay? No one cares. They just want to hear about the games.
I guess.
It's interesting seeing yourself like paint yourself into a corner. And I'm like, who else is there?
I do that very well. Paint
Yes.
myself into a corner.
You're like, and then the anxiety shows up, and it's just awful. All right, so how about I know you've saw some upcoming games coming out later this month or even in June that you wanted to talk about.
Yeah, so I did want to do go over games that I think will do well.
Okay.
Especially with Morningstar. Book of the Fallen. I think that's gonna
the
do well.
Love of Magic guy.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, they did the Love of Magic trilogy, and I think it's gonna do pretty well. It's set to release May 30th as early access.
All right.
And I actually made a video about the Love of Magic trilogy.
So it'll be interesting to see because you've seen a lot of developers kind of stumble when it comes to early access recently, and especially seasoned developers that have had games come out.
Yeah.
And I think you were telling me you think that what they could get away with and what was okay like 3 or 4 years ago.
Yeah, it's not going to do as well when it releases now in 2024.
And that's hard for a seasoned developer because like I'm just doing the same thing I did with the last game. And I don't think that consumers necessarily know you made that last game. Because Steam's putting the game in front of somebody and they're maybe seeing it for the first time. And if they buy it and they try it out because it looks good and it's not long enough or doesn't have enough gameplay to keep their interest, they're going to give it a low score.
Yeah.
And it is really hard, for that first 100 reviews, it's really hard to dig out of a hole if you start getting in a hole for that.
Yeah,
You can do it. You absolutely can do it.
Oh, yeah, it's totally possible.
Your sci-fi game, we talked about it in the last episode. The one that was terrible at launch and then slowly over the years got better.
No Man's Land?
No Man's Sky.
No Man's Sky.
Yeah.
No Man's Sky.
No Man's Sky, yeah. Oh, man, seriously, I'm old.
But yeah, No Man's Sky, that had an awful thing.
Moved to very positive Steam rating.
Jeez.
It finally has crawled its way to a very positive Steam rating. It's like, congratulations, guys. It only took you years. So yeah, definitely, I think it's dangerous to a seasoned developer in that the expectations from the consumers on Steam seem to be higher now. They seem to be demanding more, and what was okay before
is not okay now.
Yeah. And so I think that's the only danger because with Morningstar, it's like all the same characters of Love of Magic.
Yeah.
It's like an alternate reality.
It's an alternate universe, where you play as like an MMA fighter or a martial arts teacher, martial arts person. You play as that guy.
We are not going to explore your lack of understanding in this subject, so he'll be like, he's a fighter dude.
he's a fighter dude, and you don't play poker.
You don't play poker. You were so excited about that. You're like, yes.
I was so excited because
I've never been so excited to play Bejeweled.
I love Bejeweled.
Oh man,
I had that on my first phone that had touchscreen.
Showing.
I know.
Oh man, the girl loves to play puzzle games.
Whatever.
Oh man, such a shock.
But I do think Morningstar has like some huge potential to be a great game. We'll just, like you said, we'll see how it goes.
First early access.
Yeah.
No pressure, guys.
I know. But there is this game where I was talking to you about with like the renders and like the updated things.
Yeah.
So I was going to talk about Shut Up and Dance Special Edition. So this game is it's pretty old. Like their Patreon was created in like 2018. So it was kind of like out and about in 2018, so it looked like it was at 2018. But
from the DAZ renders.
Yeah, from the DAZ renders. But the special edition actually came out and includes, more scenes, and the dev is basically pretty much remaking the entire game. So it looks better.
All right.
And I think it actually has like a chance of doing really well. Because it looks like a game that was recently made.
That's a big improvement. So he's drawing upon, what he's learned through development and working on the game and the story and everything else. He's just scaling up the images.
Yeah, basically. And like I think this game can be pushed farther now because it looks better.
So we'll just have to see.
Yeah.
What else you got?
And I also wanted to talk about VoidBound.
Okay. I know you, that was from one of the developers that you were going to talk about later, right? Publishers that you're going to talk about later.
Yeah, the publishers, Shady Quarter Games,
Okay.
Which, I'll talk about later. But this game, VoidBound, was published by them. The group who made VoidBound started as translators for Japanese games, and now they make their own game. So I think that's that was a good transition for them.
Yeah, they could dip their toe in the pool and like, we can do this.
Yeah, basically. And their game is actually really cool.
Okay.
Like it's very in-depth kind of sci-fi space kind of game.
Okay.
It kind of reminded me of like Third Crisis,
which
I enjoyed.
Yeah.
It had like a ton of stats for like the corruption arc, the sci-fi setting, the Final Fantasy Tactics kind of battles.
Does it have fun maps though?
Well, the RPG kind of maps that you can see and walk around in, those are nice actually. I like them. There's not like a big world map though.
Okay, not yet.
Not yet at least.
That's to put your request. I need a world map.
Yeah, I mean, unless I didn't get
and
to it.
Make it pretty and have things happening in it.
Yeah, oh my god, yeah. If you make a map that has like things going on, like clouds moving, it adds so much. It adds so much.
I don't care about the gameplay, just give me a good map.
Basically, yeah. But I think it looks really cool, and I think it has the potential to be a really good release.
Okay. So what next?
Well, so I've hinted at all of this Patreon stuff, and I did kind of want to go into, what's going on in the Patreon realm, I guess. So I wanted to talk about some, like, 3 big things that had happened in Patreon.
I know there were some monster games that have had some trouble over the last couple weeks. Yeah.
So we had BB Ben, or Lord Goblin. And their Patreon is up now, but they won't be selling Lord Goblin on there.
Yeah, so you had Lord Goblin go down.
Yeah.
And there was no explanation.
Yeah.
You had Wildlife get under review, and then Fallen Doll Operation LoveCraft under review. And those are 2 of the top 3 earning Patreons.
Yeah, the top.
And they were all monster-themed games.
Yeah, and I mean, they are all back up now, but it's still concerning to see.
But the Lord Goblin developer was like, nah, I can't afford the income hit here.
Yeah, so he was like, all right, I'm just not going to sell it on here.
And he's moved to Subscribestar. So, and the game's doing well. It looks good. If you like goblins, or as people were telling in the YouTube comments, I
blame you for this.
Oh man, there were so many people defending the gobos, like somebody was like, "Oh, my favorite waifu was a gobbo," and it was so much
torturing
fun.
me.
It was so much fun to watch. But Wildlife is bringing in a huge amount of money, like $1 million, $2 million a year on Patreon. So it's like, okay, no, you're just gonna, you're gonna find a way to stay on Patreon.
Yeah, I wasn't really too worried about Wildlife.
And I think that it is reasonable to expect that Patreon is going to continue to disallow certain things or make it more difficult for publishers.
Oh yeah, definitely.
All of these games that we're talking about successfully transitioning from Patreon to Steam releases, I'm worried we're just going to see less of that.
I know, me too. And it's just so disappointing to see.
So who else you got? The troubles.
With the troubles, the Patreon troubles. It sounds like a disease.
The
illness. But I got Summer's Gone Season 1, which is on Steam, and these are actually the developers of Where It All Began, which was a really big popular Patreon game back in 2019. So they had a Patreon with Where It All Began, and they were actually kicked off of Patreon at the beginning of April, and so they moved over to the other one that they had made for Summer's Gone that they had made in 2019.
Okay.
So they had 2 Patreons. Sometimes developers do that where they have 2 Patreons. So they were kicked off one and they kind of just jumped over to the other one. So now they're just in that one. But it looks like they're going to try to get Summer's Gone on Steam first, and then they're going to get Where It All Began on Steam. There are about 2,000 followers for Summer's Gone, which is, you know, a decent number, but not a lot for Where It All Began. So
well, I mean, it's when you release, it really comes down to how quickly can you get 50 reviews, how quickly can you get 100 reviews, because it comes down to how many copies of the game you sell, but hitting those thresholds, the maximum threshold is 500 reviews, but that's a lot harder to hit unless you're going to be a monster game. But getting that first 50 reviews is really, really important. And if you can get to 100, generally that's a good indicator that you're gonna at least make a couple $100,000 on your game. Which is, depending on the time and energy, if you're a single developer, you know, making a couple $100,000 for 2 years of work is not bad. Especially depending on what country you live in.
Yes. But I think for Summer's Gone, I think the renders and the story is good enough. It kind of reminds me of like Leap of Faith. Which did very well. So it looks and feels like that. So I think it has like a potential to be really, really good. And there's like 5 chapters for the full release. So I think it's going to be pretty well.
All right. What do we got next?
Well, I wanted to talk about Vae Victis Khan.
Oh, God. So that's like the barbarian game.
Yeah. They've been working on it since like 2022, but it's actually not sold on Patreon.
But they have a Patreon.
They have a Patreon, yes, but they
What is it, just like redirected, like, we want you to come over here so we can sell to you?
They redirect you to their Discord, so you can get it on there.
All right.
And they've been using this method since they launched the game on Patreon. So how are they funding themselves?
Subscribestar?
Yes, there is a Subscribestar.
Okay. Or Itch?
Yeah.
Okay. And the thing about that game is it just seems so ambitious. It seems like it's got so many different gameplay styles. It's like it wants to be like a visual novel for certain things and a strategy game for certain things and an RPG for certain things. Yeah,
there's a lot going on in this one. It's like this fiefdom management where you have your own fiefdom and you just you manage it and you try to take over the entire world. And you know, it has mini quests where you can attack other enemy fiefdoms, and then you can get the girls who control their own little sections, and you can like take them back. And, like, you can like choose whether if you want to like seduce them or recruit them. It
reminds me of this old school Dungeons and Dragons game.
Of course it does.
Birthright, the Gorgon's Alliance. And you can go,
oh God,
you're going to look it up and you're going to show it and everything else.
It has an old name.
Oh, shut up. Oh my God, you're a terrible human. But it's only if Rance was in charge, because your main character is definitely not.
He does
heroic.
Not. No, he is very much an anti-hero kind of guy. He does not care what he does. He rapes and pillages and does just whatever he wants.
All right, we got Conan up in this.
Yeah. But I actually do want to talk about their map.
Okay. Is the map good?
Yeah, it's good. Okay. I would rate it like an 8 out of 10.
But you don't rate things. Are we going to start rating maps? Is that going to happen?
I want to. When a game has
sex-positive cartography.
Yeah, pretty much. But no, like it has, you know, nice mountain ranges. You can see everything. It has a nice color palette. It looks kind of like oldie looking.
But not as oldie as Birthright, the Gorgon's Alliance.
No, that's very old. But overall, you know, a nice map. But yeah, like if you like Rants and if you like whatever game you said, I think you would like this.
You like whatever boomer game you're talking about.
Yeah, pretty much.
I believe it's a Gen Xer game.
Look, I'll look it up and I'll just be like, oh God.
Great, I appreciate that. All right, what do we have next, since we've shredded my dignity once again?
Okay, the last game for the Patreon kind of section is How to Lose One's Virginity.
Oh, that seems on the nose.
Yeah, don't try to look it up, because I actually tried to do that, and I looked it up.
Shut up.
I was like, oh, that's not what I want. But the Patreon, it's called G Point, and they made actually a new Patreon in 2024, despite the game starting production kind of like 2 years ago.
Okay.
But they have recently talked on their Patreon about the rules and how their new game will reflect these rules. It mainly about consent.
So content change.
Yeah,
Okay.
and so even if I just wanted to bring this up because it's a new Patreon and they're talking about this and they're bringing this up.
I think everybody is acutely aware.
Well, I'm wondering if that's just gonna become the case with all of these, where they're just like they have to make a post to be like, okay.
I think the thing that people struggle with is Patreon only bans for one thing.
Yeah.
Patreon bans for what it considers to be non-consensual fiction. So all of the different classifications of, age and animals and family relationships,
It all
violence,
falls under that.
it all falls under that.
Yeah.
So and the problem is you've talked about many times, what is consensual, what is not consensual in fiction is
It's up to the person.
It's
up to
really,
interpretation.
So it really feels more and more like Patreon is just being arbitrary with its classification. And I think they mean well. I think that they've had layoffs. They've had, they've had a change in their valuation in the wrong direction. And I think that maybe the workers that are there and in charge of this, they just may be overwhelmed right now. And as opposed to this being some type of sinister, concerted, attempt to sabotage the space, it could just be that you've just got people who are overworked and overwhelmed, and they're just not giving the time and the energy that the space needs them to give. So
yeah, that could be the case.
We'll just have to see with time, unfortunately.
Yeah,
see how it goes. All right. Maybe Too Early's next.
Yeah, I wanted to get into.
I think this is going to be your most controversial section.
I think it probably is. It probably is. So yeah, I didn't want to talk about some games that might be a little too early to seem.
But let's put the caveat here.
You're like, ooh, wait.
You think these are good games, and
yes.
think they have the potential to be fantastic releases.
Yes.
You just feel that...
A disclaimer.
Yes.
This is a
you
disclaimer.
just feel like they are... And I think because you expected them to do better, you were kind of surprised about...
Yes.
Like, the review scores, how many reviews they have, how they seem to be selling. And you still think they can do well. You're just,
Just, with time.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're seeing these games come from, like, these big publishers like Flexible Media or Inciton. Putting out these games that just aren't doing as well, which is just really just disappointing to see. I mean, like with Flexible Media, I loved Paradise Lost when I played it.
Wasn't it your top romance game?
Yeah, it was my best romance game of 2023. It was so good. I loved it. So when I saw like Sinner's Landing was not performing as well, it was just really surprising to me because it's basically, Paradise Lost in a fantasy settings. You have the same art style, it's the same visual novel, sandbox kind of gameplay, but it does have the added car battler, which isn't that bad, and I hate car battlers. So if I found it easy, then you will probably find it easy. But I mean, by far my favorite mini game was probably the stained glass one. That was just really fun. I played the demo over the Steam Next Fest. And I had a ton of fun with the game. So I was just really surprised that it is not doing that well. And so, you talked about this before, like earlier in the video, like, this may just be a situation where what the Steam community tolerated from an early access game from a content standpoint, it just needs to be longer. Because, like, when you think of when Paradise Lost came out, it was just a different time. And so 2024, you just need more content, I guess. And they're also working on Paradise Lost 2, so they have their hands full.
I know when you looked at the top games, Paradise Lost 2 didn't have enough reviews.
Yeah, it only has like 47 reviews, and so I'm just really worried about how little that number is.
And I know that's one of the metrics you look at. I mean, your year-end list is entirely metrics based. But
yes.
But you do have a minimum number of reviews that you require, which you don't tell people what that number is.
No, I don't, because then
people game it.
And I want it to be like a natural thing. Yeah.
And so what other games have been on the radar about this?
well, Instanton, the people who made Lust Theory, they're doing like this Unreal Lust Theory, which is like, it was like an adaptation.
3D kind of conversion.
Well, yeah, it's Lust Theory in the Unreal 5 engine, and that's basically what it is.
I know you were excited about this. Is it not doing well?
Yeah, it's not doing that well. And it's really surprising because, it's just Lust Theory as a 3D game. And so there are a few changes.
What are the reviews saying?
The reviews, there's not a lot of content. The release that they had is basically just the sandbox mode with like a few sexual animations.
Okay.
So there isn't a lot that was released. And it was like an early form of the sandbox mode. So, but I do think converting your game that had done well into another kind like of engine, is an interesting thing to do. I think it will take a lot of time to do this. But
if it's going to take a lot of time and they already have the game out on Steam, that's not good.
I do think they should have waited until they had more of like a concrete kind of.
Because I think it's at a mixed review right now, isn't it?
It is at a mixed review.
That is really hard to dig out of.
Yeah. People have run into a lot of bugs. And it's just not enough content. So I think they just need more time. And I hope it gets to a place where there is enough content and it looks nice and it plays nice. But I don't know if people will be able to wait for it.
And what's the third game you have for this?
The third game is My Demonic Romance.
Which you were really excited about.
I was. It's by the same people who made Love and Sex Second Base.
Yeah, and they've made some other ones. They made True Love, and they made, there was the Frog one on Steam.
Yeah, the Frog one. I played that one. That was fun, yeah. But Love and Sex Second Base was actually my top harem game for 2023. So it was a good game, and so I was really excited for this one. It's a visual novel about a succubus named Lily taking over your life and how you have to
and
just
it's got
work around it.
very different romance paths that you can, a wide variety of things. Is it just that it's too short right now, or?
Yeah, it's just that it's too short. Like right now, I think it's like version 0.13, and so there's just not enough content right now.
At least for what the Steam audience is saying.
Yeah, especially that. And there's only like 22 reviews so far as of the recording.
That's really low.
Yeah, it's really low. So, I mean, I guess this one also needs more time. Maybe, I would say maybe like in about a year or so.
Isn't this one of the developers you're trying to get on?
Yeah.
Interview?
Yes, I am.
Hopefully this won't scare him off.
I know. I'm talking good things about his game. Because like it is a good game, and I'm not just saying that because I want him on my video or my podcast, but I do think it's a solid game that I just think needs more time.
Okay. All right. So I know you don't normally like to speak ill of games.
Yeah.
But given the fact you've talked about some games that maybe came out a little too early that aren't bad, you have by comparison some games that maybe shouldn't have come out.
Yeah, I do. I have, I guess, 3 games.
Okay.
So this first game, it's called Town of Sins. And I'm going to be honest, for the people who are watching this on YouTube, I'm not going to be able to show much. I'm just going to put that out there right now. But this is basically a pay-to-win game where you have to put in money to the game to actually progress through it. Yeah, real money.
So it's like a mobile game.
Yes.
Okay.
And I don't really know why people would want to do that with an adult game.
Well, that's the whole Nutaku.
Nutaku, yeah. And they're known for, releasing these games with the gacha mechanics.
Yeah, you just don't review gacha games.
I don't because
so why is this one on the list then? You're just like, well...
Well, I don't know. I did want to cover these games because, they are bad in layman's terms, but people do,
spend money on them and play them.
Yeah, so it does have a specific audience.
Are there any gacha games on Steam that have decent reviews, or did they all just kind of get mixed, or they just kinda... It's just interesting to see how, I wonder if that's just a space that's going to grow, or it's a smaller space.
I don't know. I mean, there is that game, what is it called? King of Kings? Kind of like that. Yeah. Where, I think it does well. But
like 42 games.
Yeah. Oh, jeez. No. But yeah, I think For Town of Sin, I think the only thing that's like saving it is the art because it's hand-drawn and it's animated really well. But overall, it's just a non-balanced game with gacha mechanics, and
So if you got money to burn, go for it.
Yeah.
Right, who else you got?
So the next two are actually from the same publishing company.
Is this your Blackbone guy?
It is.
Oh,
The Curse of Blackbone. If you remember, if my older YouTube people remember me covering the Curse of Blackbone back in 2022, they essentially remember me ripping into that game. In my kind of way. Yeah. You look back and it's just like not that mean.
You're like, yeah, but for you it's like, oh, I feel so mean.
I know.
So, what is it, Deadrock Redemption?
Yeah, Deadrock Redemption and Lust and Legends.
Was Deadrock Redemption the one you were like giving a second chance to because it was like a cowboy game?
Yeah, I was gonna give it, a chance to come back. I was like, okay, maybe this was just like a little thing, even though they had like 6 other games that did not do well.
I still tried.
Yeah, I know. And I thought, it'd have, like a redemption. But it just kind of fell flat. It was this cowboy game where you could walk around and do some like odd jobs for the town. But it's awkward. It's clunky. The graphics are dated. The world was really small. It was just not a good game.
Okay.
I was just really disappointed in both these games because they had like 2 of my favorite themes, which were pirates and cowboys, and they just they both failed to deliver on both of those. Because I love anything with pirates and anything with cowboys. So I think that's why I was just really excited for both of these and just really overly disappointed with both of them. But the other one from the same developer or the same publishing thing is Lust and Legends. And it has the potential, but my hopes are still low for it. It's similar to the other games with like the open world exploration and quests and sexual animations.
It's just still clunky.
But it's still awkward and clunky and dated looking. And, they have done patches and fixes for this game, and when they haven't done anything with the Curse of Blackbone, it's still untouched. They haven't done anything to do with it. They just left it, and so maybe this one will do well, and maybe they'll have patches and they'll fix the errors and they'll make it a better game. But I don't know how that will turn out, and, hopefully will, but I don't know.
I mean, and a game doesn't always have to be fantastic in order for it to do well and be popular and be fun. I know we're seeing more and more meme games in this space.
Yeah.
In the end of 2022, you covered Sex Chess.
And yes.
I know it launched, and I don't think it had en passant when it launched.
No.
They patched it in, and there were other things. But they had different modes, and it was kind of ridiculous, and it was kind of fun. I mean, it wasn't great, but it was kind of fun.
Yeah.
What meme games do you see in the space right now?
Well, you bring up Sex Chess. It's actually by the same people who made Sex Chess. It was Evil Boobs Cult. And they have a new game coming out that's called Sex Please. And it's basically it kind of feels like if Deadpool was stuck in a sex shop. Okay. And, just the antics that he would get up to. Okay. The main character is goofy and a bit off, so mentally.
So we'll see how that one goes. When's that coming out?
Yeah, that's coming out this month.
Okay. And what other meme games do you have?
I have these series that do feel kind of like meme-y to me, especially with their titles. It's the Sex and the Furry Titty and the Furry Shades of Gay, those series.
They've been on some of your top Steam lists.
Oh, yeah. They always make it to one of my top Steam lists every year. And the one that I want to talk about was the Sex and the Furry Titty 3 Come Inside, Sweety. And so they've had all of these series come out, and
it's like a visual novel with puzzles, right?
Yeah. It's what's the puzzle? It's a match 3 puzzle. Yeah. So it's really easy gameplay. It's mainly about the art that you're gonna see in that game and the stories.
Focused, which
oh yeah,
always
very
seems to have good art.
Yeah, honestly, it's really good art.
And you were noticing that we were watching Eurovision, and there were a lot more furry fans in the audience.
Honestly, yeah, they kept showing people with like those furry ears, and I was like, oh.
And it was just interesting to see.
Yeah, it was just interesting to see. I was not expecting that, but
the growth of the furry space.
Yeah.
And you had one more meme game?
Yeah, so this one is called LoveCraft, and it actually has nothing to do with Lovecraftian stuff.
Of course not.
No.
That would make too much sense.
I know. But basically, it's like The Sims and VMX situation, kind of, set in like a Second Life universe.
So is it a multiplayer game?
Yes.
Okay.
So you can meet up with people, do things with people. There's like events like a beach party or going to the club and dancing. You can run around on a raptor. You can race other players.
Are you technically running around on a raptor? Wouldn't you be riding the raptor and the raptor's running?
You're riding a raptor.
Yeah, I'm just...
Okay, yeah. Stupid. But there's a lot that you can do in the game. That's why it kind of feels like Sims-like, Second Life, kind of like that. But yeah, it's doing well on Steam so far, and it's actually free to play.
So does that mean it's going to have some type of internal real money system?
That's one of the counter.
Well,
that's one of the bad things.
That's what Second Life did too.
Yeah, basically. But you will have to spend real life money to get like in-game purchases and stuff.
To get your not real life raptor rides.
Pretty much, yeah.
And I know that one of the things that we see in this space is there are some people that are just buying games because they just want to experience the sexual animations.
Yeah, games that don't really focus on the gameplay aspect, but more on the sexual animations and how good the renders look and all that.
What games do we have that's come out in the last 3 months that kind of fall into that category?
Well, I actually have a couple. So I wanted to start with Orgasm Academy. Dude, these names are not...
I get it. I get it.
They're there, and they're just going to stay there. Any
story that might exist in these games only occurs in the title.
Basically, yeah. Like in this game, like you go to an all-girls academy, and so you can inherit your parents' fortune. Because
those two things are completely related.
Yeah, to each exactly. Other. And so it doesn't make sense, but that's not what we're here for.
Okay.
so it has these interactive, high-quality animations.
And that's what you're doing.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense.
I think it's like a visual novel, but
it's about the
very
basically
linear.
These are videos.
Yeah. Okay. And it's the same with Cyber Sex, Lust Story, and Sex of Thrones. They do have some gameplay aspects, like in Cyber Sex, you have like this mini game where you have to install implants into your Android to make her have more human-like interactions.
So it's a speed bump.
Yeah, kind of like another game by Mango Party. It's called Transpile Girl Rescue Operation. And so, yeah, I know, that's a title. But it's kind of like that. And then Sex of Thrones has some visual novel aspects, but they're both really about the sex scenes. And I did think it was funny going over these games. They would say things about the game, and they're just like, oh, it has quote-unquote unique gameplay or quote-unquote immersive storyline. And it's literally just sex scenes. That's what they're there for.
But I mean, if there's an audience for it and they're enjoying it, who are we to gatekeep what is and is not a game?
Exactly.
It's like those people who insist that visual novels aren't games, and it's like how much bandwidth are you expending fighting on YouTube about what is and is not a video game?
Yeah.
If Steam classifies it as a video game, take it up with Gabe.
Pretty much. I mean, at least like Sex of Thrones is like candid about it because they're just like, oh yeah, we have good animations. Please play our game.
And if you like Game of Thrones,
basically, it's basically Game of Thrones. With like that the drama and the fantasy world building. You can also have sex with the dragon, which you can't do in Game of Thrones.
Right, you can't do in Ravager.
You can do it in Ravager.
There might be a series of Game of Thrones where that happens. Who knows? Because the dragons get really, really small and feeble
Game of Thrones?
Yeah, because remember in the prequels, it's like they get smaller and smaller, and they show the smaller and smaller skeletons till the dragons died out.
Oh,
so maybe at some point they would have been small enough so it's not, horrific. It's probably horrific.
Yeah, that sounds horrific.
I know.
But then my other game is, the name is kind of weird. It's My MILF Stepmom 2. family party.
Well, I think that definitely gets the flavors across very effectively.
It does, yeah. You got MILF, you got stepmom, a family.
Right,
yeah.
It's a party. There
yeah,
you
and
go.
it's the second one.
Yeah.
So that means there's a first one. So you got
Why didn't we hear about this one before now?
But it's actually doing pretty well on Steam. It does have some AFK mini games.
Okay.
So I guess that's pretty much why it's on this one.
Okay.
Yeah. Because AFK mini games don't
So
really
a game
count.
like this could graduate into a meme game depending on the substance.
Yeah.
All right.
But these are by the same people who actually did Office is My Harem, which I covered back in Steam September list in 2023.
Okay.
So
I know you've got some publishers you want to talk about, and you've talked about. I know you talked about Mango Party and PlayMeow previously, and you were going to introduce two new publishers. As well.
I was going to introduce 072 Project and Shady Corner Games.
Okay, so which one do you want to start with of the four?
I kind of want to start with Mango Party.
Okay.
So, I covered Mango Party actually in my last podcast, which was 2 videos ago, with Kaiju Princess and how Kaiju Princess 2 is set to come out this year. But Mango Party is also one of the publishers that I follow for metrics, and some of these games that have come out are doing very, very well, like Lovey-Dovey Lockdown and Story of Eve 2, both of which I covered in my Steam Next Fest video. So, for Lovey-Dovey Lockdown, they actually changed the name for it. It used to be Sexy Room, but now they changed it to Lovey-Dovey Lockdown. I think that makes more sense.
The game's more fun. the title is more fun. So.
Yeah, but it makes sense because you are, locked in a room with your high school crush, and you have to have sex in order to leave. So it makes sense. The title makes sense, and it does, explore the Notori flavor because your high school crush is actually married.
No. There you go.
It came out in March, and it's already doing pretty well.
Okay.
The same thing with Story of Eve 2, which is a whole different game. It's a car battler, again. There's so many. That should have been a whole, section that I should have done. Car battler.
You'd be so miserable.
I know. Oh, my God. But yeah, it's where you go into, a dungeon, and you dungeon crawl. It takes place after the first game and continues Eve's plummet into corruption, and you have some help from, a succubus. So, it's her corruption arc is going faster now than in the first one, and has some, rock, paper, scissors inspired gameplay, but it's doing well. And there's another game that's actually doing pretty well. It's called Honeymoon Mystery Journey, and it's this murder mystery type of visual novel where you do have some simple puzzles to solve the murder mystery. And so if you like to use your detective skills to do stuff, then, check that out.
And do they have anything coming out soon?
Yeah, they have this one game that, it just looked interesting to me. It's called My Holiness the Gobliness, which...
The Gobliness?
Yeah. No, Goblin. Goblinness.
My bad.
Yeah. But it's basically where you take care of this goblin shaman who's really lazy. You have to do everything for her. You have to control her hunger, her lust, her cleanliness, that kind of stuff.
It's like a trainer almost.
Yeah, it's basically a trainer. But it's cute. It has a cutesy art style. And I think it has the potential to do pretty well. So I think it has the potential to do well.
Moving on to PlayMeow?
Yeah, PlayMeow. So this is another publisher that I talked about in my last podcast in regards to their increasing yaoi game catalog. But these games today that I'm going to talk about are not yaoi games. They're far from it, actually. They're more of the PlayMeow kind of game.
Okay.
So the first game is called Colony City 27.
So you're saying it's a PlayMeow game, so it's going to be a female protagonist corruption game?
Yes.
Well,
yeah.
Thank you.
Wow, that was so good.
Psychic.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of PlayMeow games are basically female protagonist corruption. But so this one has sex on defeat mechanics. It has a pretty cool art style. It reminds me of the Cyberpunk 2077 anime. Okay. But not as gory.
Yeah.
But you have to decide whether or not you want to fully corrupt the female protagonist or not. It's also a car battler.
Of
Again.
That's the thing this year, man.
It really is, and car battlers are becoming very popular, and so that's fun. It's fun if it's like easy to do. The next game that PlayMeow has is called Fatal Countdown: Immoral List of Desires. And that has a notorious plot line where you have like one of the love interests being your brother's wife.
That ain't right, man.
That ain't right.
That ain't right.
So this one's kind of like a zombie apocalypse one.
No shaming, but I am judging.
Oh, don't judge.
In the zombie apocalypse, you must band together with your fellow humans, not steal their wives.
But so this is like a zombie apocalypse kind of one where there's like this deadly outbreak of a virus in your city and everyone's affected except you and a couple people. And so now you have to protect your childhood friend and also your brother's wife from the infected population.
Who's protecting them from you?
Yeah, well, that is one of the things you have to worry about. You have to worry about your infection rate and your insanity.
I'm worried about your lack of moral compass.
But all the affected people are like raging horn dogs now, so you also have to protect them from that.
So the average protagonist in these games.
Pretty much, yeah. But it's like a visual novel with some survival RPG kind of gameplay. So
sounds interesting.
Yeah, you have to go out and like gather food to defend your base while you try to escape the city, that kind of stuff.
Okay.
And the third game that I want to talk about is really interesting to me, I guess, personally. It's called Liu Shan Maker, and it's going to come out this month, and it's set in ancient China. It's a trainer game where you have to help this up-and-coming empress and help her with her studies, help her with her conversations, how to please people, that kind of thing. But I personally read a ton of web novels and manhwa that are set in ancient China, Japan, ancient Korea. So I'm really excited to see how this one goes. I just hope it doesn't go as poorly as The World of Gangs went, which did pretty poorly, unfortunately.
Was that also by PlayMeow?
Yes, it was. But the next publisher that I want to talk about is called 072 Project. And I haven't really focused on this publisher too much because...
I think it's the first time we've talked about them.
Yeah, because, I mean, they're relatively new. They started publishing games in 2020, but really started picking up speed in, like, 2023. And so there are 3 new games that they came out with that I wanted to highlight because they're actually doing very well. And the first game I want to talk about is called Love X Gym.
Hold on a second, because we had this conversation with Hunter x Hunter.
Yes,
if it's the name and an X, I don't think you're supposed to say the X.
I know, but I say Hunter x Hunter.
So shouldn't it be LoveCraft Gym?
Yes, it should be.
Okay, I'm just making sure I understand this.
Saying Love X Crocs Gym, I can't even say it.
Well, you say Hunter x Hunter, but it's Hunter Hunter.
Yeah, but saying Hunter Hunter is just like Hunter.
That's what the creator calls it, okay?
Okay.
Do you know better than the creator about his own project?
No, but I'm still not gonna call it Hunter Hunter. I'm gonna call it Hunter x Hunter.
All right. So you have LoveCraft Gym.
Yeah, LoveCraft Gym. It kind of reminds me of Handyman Legend, where you have like the college student, the older businesswoman, and then the married woman, and you have to seduce all of them, or you really choose who you want to woo. There are a lot of mini games where you are training the love interest because you work at the gym, and so you're training them at the gym. But I think it's doing pretty well. So like if you like Handyman Legend, you'll probably like this one.
Okay.
But there are more notorious games. We have
Fallen. That seemed to be their theme, maybe.
Yes. Okay. It's called Fallen Young Wife Netherate H Without Telling Her Husband. That was a really long title on Steam, actually. Like, I feel like that was the limit of characters that they had.
Weren't allowed to go any further.
It was so long. But it actually kind of feels like very similar to NTR-aholic, where you are blackmailing the wife in order to get what you want. But the difference with this one is that the married female protagonist is willing to do really anything right off the bat. So
it's not so much a corruption, it's more of a...
Yeah. So it happens much faster than NTR-aholic. And NTR-aholic actually progresses relatively fast, so it's faster than that. But if you do like NTR-aholic, you would probably like this one.
Okay.
And actually, Hilda and the Tower of Lust is another one of their games that came out in April and is doing pretty well. It's an RPG where you have like this tower that acts as the different stages.
This is the one where it's like the guy and the girl, and then the guy like opens the door to the tower with his magic power, and the girl goes in, and then the girl has to like send him energy back to keep the tower open, and it's just a corruption fest in the tower.
Yeah, definitely corruption. But so she has to go like through each of these levels, and think of them as kind of like what was that game? Sword Art Online, where you had like the different levels. And each stage,
little town and everything.
Yeah. So it's kind of like that. And she's trying to get to the top to defeat the Demon Lord.
I think this game only sold like 4,000 copies on DL sites. So.
Yeah, it did. It was from DL site, and it didn't do.
That's not
good.
Great. That's not good. So I mean,
it's doing okay on Steam so far. So hopefully it'll continue doing okay.
So like we said, it's a new developer. We'll see how they do.
Yeah.
And you've got another newer publisher too, right?
Yeah. Shady Corner Games.
Shady Corner Games.
Shady Corner Games. But Shady Corner Games is actually the publisher for Future Fragments and in a game called BoneTown: The Second Coming Edition.
People like that.
People do like it. Yeah, like it was.
Did you do a whole review on it?
No, people wanted me to.
Would you have it in a list?
Yeah, it was in my top Steam games of 2021 list. Okay. And yeah, people wanted me to play that, but I couldn't. Like, I'm gonna.
So much stuff to censor.
Yeah, it's gonna be a bitch to censor what I'm gonna be showing right now on
I'm
YouTube.
Gonna show a lot of Future Fragments.
Oh, I guess I could. I'm just gonna pop up like just like
the
stills.
Screenshot of BoneTown and just all of us Future Fragments.
or maybe I have like some footage of me just like looking at a tree or something. I'll use that. I don't know if I have that or not. But yeah, if I had covered it, I would have had to censor literally everything because there's nudity everywhere.
Don't they have some DLC coming out for it?
Yeah, that's why I did want to talk about that. Yeah, it's called BoneTown: The Second Coming Edition, Kinks. And they had a lot of stuff. Like, they have, like, a lesbian mode, a gay mode, a fuda mode, a pregnant mode, new characters, more customization.
Now, is this one DLC or is it going to be multiple DLCs?
No, it's one DLC. Okay. And so it's going to add so much additional content. I don't think I've seen a DLC have this much stuff.
And is it going to be story stuff, too, or just modes?
It's just modes, I think.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So that could be just skins and some more animations, though. So
yeah,
we'll just have to see how comprehensive it really is.
Yeah. But I did want to talk about more recent games that they're coming out with, and one is called Dungeon Vixens: A Tale of Temptation, which is a game that I brought up like before, and I haven't really gone into much detail about it.
Was that the low fidelity kind of black and white kind of game?
Yeah. It was like this retro looking black and white graphics that I kind of compared to with what was it? Living with Sister Monochrome Fantasy, and I kind of connected it with that.
Yeah.
Just by looks, obviously, because this game is more of a dungeon crawler where you're exploring a dungeon in hopes of finding your lost love.
And it's full of like monster girls.
Yeah, it's full of monster girls, where you know you go around a corner and there's a monster girl instead of like a giant rat. Which sounds much more appealing than, like an old... Oh, I guess, yeah. Maybe there is. There is a spider girl.
There's always a spider girl at this point.
Yeah, there really is. They're very popular. But, if you like the Monster Girl flavor, there's also another game that they came out with called... the name's kind of funny. It's called Monster Girl Conquest Records Battle Orc.
Stop. That's not even no.
That's
not even Mad Libs. That's just.
It's just words.
Is that a translation?
I don't know. It was on DL site, so
a couple
it could be
or something. Monster Girl Conquest. We're there. Okay, and then maybe it's Monster Girl Conquest Records, and
or
then
maybe
Battle Orc is the record. I don't even know.
I don't know, or maybe it's Records.
No, I don't know.
Monster Girl Conquest Records.
I have no idea.
Battle Orc.
So we need this publisher to explain to us what this madness is.
But so yeah, it was on DL site in like 2023.
But it wasn't on your list. So.
It wasn't on my list.
Okay,
no.
So it wasn't one of the high performers.
No.
This is probably just a localization thing.
Probably, yeah. But so it's like a side scroller beat 'em up, kind of like Final Fight. And you play as like this last living orc. And
are you a battle orc?
Probably. Yeah, probably. And you just fight these monster girls.
Okay.
There's like just a ton of monster girls. You have like elves and centaurs and zombies and robots and succubi and bees. A lot. There's a lot. There's like 50 types or something. So, you know, if you like monster girls, this is probably the one to play.
So what do you think, given the fact you've got Steam Next Fest coming up, which is
in June.
Which is going to show you the new stuff. I mean,
I'm excited for that one.
Is there, I mean, what do you think we can expect to see in the next 6 months? Seems like card battlers are a big thing now.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, card battlers, a lot of those. I think NTR games are becoming more popular.
I think we're seeing a lot more of the Notori, where you're stealing the person as opposed to having them stolen.
Yeah.
I don't, given the visceral response that some people have to having their loved ones stolen, I don't think we're ever going to see really high performance, high ratings on Steam, because they're going to be people that are like, no, and they're going to give it bad reviews. So I always think there's going to be that separation.
Yeah, I can see that.
I think corruption games.
Oh, definitely. I feel like corruption. Well. Yeah, I feel like corruption games do well, especially the female protagonist ones.
But it is interesting to see that we're still seeing Patreon games come out. But most of the Patreon games you mentioned seem to be titles that finished, you know, in some cases 2 or 3 years ago.
Yeah.
And they're just being released on Steam now. So I will be interested to see your up and coming Patreon video that you do, just to see, what we can look at in the future. Yeah. That'll be.
Yeah.
But other than that, I mean, do you feel good about where we are so far with 2024? Do you think it's going to be as strong as 2023?
I think it's going to be stronger than 2023. So because like at the beginning, what did I say? It was like 800 are already out right now. And there were like 1,700 in 2023. And if we already have 800 right now, then, I mean, I feel like by the math, it would be more.
I guess a little. How it goes.
Yeah,
could
maybe
slow
something.
Down.
Of course, it could slow down. But I do feel like the beginning of the year is like a lot of games come out at the beginning of the year, and then it kind of slows down by fall. But I do think a lot of games would come out in like the summer.
Okay.
Because I can think of like off the top of my head some games that are coming out in the summer, and so
like Subverse.
Yeah, like Subverse. There's I can think of a few Steam Next Fest videos or Steam Next Fest games that I covered coming out this summer.
So we'll just have to see.
Yeah, we'll just have to see.
I think this is a good kind of halfway point, getting an idea about what's coming out, and we'll just see what the second half of the year has in store.
Yeah, I guess so. If you enjoyed this episode of Shame Free Gaming, be sure to check out my YouTube channel, my Patreon, and my Discord. Also, all of the games that we've talked about can be found on my Patreon, Sex Positive Gaming. And I will see you next time.